So I kind of feel like only a fan of Phantasm could make this connection, but watch this. Hi, welcome to the Motion Picture Notion. I'm your host, Gabriel Burton. So I watched Sonic the Hedgehog for the first time yesterday, if that wasn't apparent by my opening. I'm obviously, having grown up in the 90s, a huge fan of Sonic the Hedgehog. The first game that I ever had for my Sega Game Gear was Sonic the Hedgehog 2. One of my favorite games to play for Sega Game Gear was Sonic Triple Trouble. He was an icon of the 90s. He was the Mario of the 90s. He was awesome, and I used to watch the cartoon voiced by Jaleel White. And incidentally, you know, that was an interesting thing because I was sort of like, I was a little bit bummed, admittedly, that they didn't pick him to voice Sonic the Hedgehog. But the dude who played John Ralphio, great substitute. And not for nothing, he did an amazing job in the movie. There's an episode that I did back in season 2, Video Game Movies Have Yet to Come, where I was essentially talking about how, like, back in the 90s, comic book movies weren't taken quite as seriously. I mean, you had, like, a couple standout films, like, obviously, the Christopher Reeve Superman and the Michael Keaton Batman movies. But other than that, like, you know, anytime somebody would do a comic book movie, they'd be like, this is a comic book movie, so let's make it kind of... They didn't really have much respect for any semblance of a serious story. They made it, like, kind of cartoony and unrealistic, and in some cases, it was just lazy and shitty. And, you know, gradually that changed. I think that the trend started in 2000 with X-Men, and throughout the years, comic book movies have just gotten better and better and better until they got to Iron Man. Now you have the whole Marvel Universe, and it's like... People are just looking for ways to outdo the last comic book movie that they made. Video game movies, I find, and you could, you know, criticize last decade and the decade before that, where they were doing really well with comic book movies, they were kind of treating video game movies with that same, like, carelessness. My whole attitude has always been, if there's source material there, okay, and if it's popular, right? If it's not enough for like a solid plot, incorporate as much as you can and build a plot around that. Don't change this, or this character's not here and this character took their place and actually it's not this, it's that. Like, just, guys, it's literally less work. This is the exact same thing I said in that video. It's literally less work to just follow the guideline that's already there for you. Now, for years, I thought that Mortal Kombat was the best video game movie ever. All right, and I have to say, in my opinion, a lot of people will probably disagree with me, but its place has been taken now by Sonic the Hedgehog. Mortal Kombat was great, you know, it's good, cheesy fun, and the video game didn't really have, I mean, the characters had their backstories, I suppose, and there was this kind of vague plot about, like, you know, a tournament and shit, and so they really did what they could with that movie. You know, they essentially took the plot of Enter the Dragon and just incorporated all the characters from Mortal Kombat. The point is, judging it just on being a movie, yeah, it's corny, it's lame, it was clearly designed for, like, you know, kids of the time, which is why it was rated PG-13. And if you look at it now, it's like there are some parts in it that are laughable. Some of the CG is absolutely terrible. But it still has a charm, and if you grew up with it, you know, you realize, like, wow, Paul W.S. Anderson, this is back when he gave a shit before the Resident Evil movies, and he actually tried to base a movie off of the video game. Now, Sonic the Hedgehog is, like, a little bit more grounded than the video games themselves. But there are a lot of, like, little Easter eggs in there, like Green Hills and stuff like that. That's a level from Sonic, and that's the town that he escapes to. There's really not much given to his backstory. There is this owl character. Now, I'm not going to say that, like, I'm the #1 Sonic fan, and I don't recall her character from anything, even, like, the cartoon back in the day. So that was kind of, like, really quick, and it's just sort of like he comes from some other planet on the other side of the universe, and it's like, here, use this ring, it'll bring you someplace safe, and you can hide out until you have to escape again. Side note, a few days later, I'm pretty sure those were echidnas chasing him, which is cool. And I mean, even the mythology behind Dr. Robotnik, obviously, they changed it. It's not like he comes from Sonic's world where he roboticizes animals and stuff like that. But he, I don't think that it was a coincidence that they chose Jim Carrey for the role. I really do not, because if you grew up in the 90s, you really loved Jim Carrey and, like, his super, super, super ridiculously, like, physically talented, super goofy humor. You know, even though his movies were a lot of the times really inappropriate, kids loved it. We loved Ace Ventura, we loved The Mask. Anything Jim Carrey from the 90s, if you were a kid, you loved it. Even like The Riddler and stuff like that. You're like, oh, Jim Carrey's playing the Riddler. This is gonna be amazing. I can't wait. We were kids. Give us a break. But the thing that I liked is, in this movie, Jim Carrey was very much in his element. I guess you're already suspending a lot of disbelief, believing that there is a hedgehog from the other side of the universe that looks CGI and lives in this world. Speaking of CGI, this is just, sorry, side note. The people who made this movie clearly took a lot of time and care with trying to please the fans while trying to please a new generation. But what the hell is up with this? Now, I mean, to be fair, I know that they fixed it. I know that they listened to the fans' complaints and they fixed it. I understand that. But how would that have been a thing? Anyways, I'm glad they changed it. But Sonic the Hedgehog is a very endearing character. He's super cool. It's great for kids and adults alike because the adults, obviously, they have that nostalgia now. They can go out and see, Sonic, I remember that. This movie was handled with care. It really was. And it wasn't just like, we're making a video game movie for the sake of making a video game. No. These people, these filmmakers really did their best to make a good film. And I'm not saying that it was like mind-blowing, like it's the best thing you're ever gonna see. But what I'm talking about is, as far as video game movies go, this is like the best I've seen. Now, I do think that the thing that kind of broke the mold and started this, what might be a trend, might have been like Detective Pikachu, which was also a really good movie. But Detective Pikachu was kind of like its own story. It had Pokemon in it, but it was a story that involved Pokemon. It was a mystery that involved Pokemon. If it had been like a Pokemon movie with, you know, Ash Ketchum and Misty and Brock and all that and the professor, then it would have been like a Pokemon movie. But as it stands, it was really kind of a side thing. Again, I'm not taking away from it, but even if you compare that side by side with Sonic the Hedgehog, I think that Sonic the Hedgehog is a more fun movie. It operates at like a much quicker like pace. It's very action-packed. I mean, if you really want to get into it and you really want to try to apply logic to this movie, I don't understand why on God's green earth you would. You could say, what's James Marsden's stake in all this? Risking becoming a fugitive on behalf of this alien hedgehog that he met like 20 minutes ago. What makes him want to go so up to bat for this little guy? But that's not the question you should really be asking in a film like this. It's a kid's film. Sonic is an endearing character, and it's like, can't it just be that simple? Like, this dude saw that he was a good little dude, and he just, like, he wanted to help him. That should be enough. So essentially, I don't really even frankly have any criticisms for this movie. If anybody begs to differ on that, because I know there's a lot of like very vehement Sonic the Hedgehog fans out there. If anybody noticed something that I didn't, please comment below, because I would love to talk about this. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, because again, you know, based on video game adaptations, yes, Mortal Kombat did a really great job, and that's why it held first place for me for such a long time as the best video game movie ever. But the difference between Mortal Kombat and Sonic the Hedgehog is that not only is Sonic the Hedgehog a decent enough adaptation, it's also, in and of itself, a good movie. Definitely worth your time, you know, and if you're a 90s kid, it'll give you that nice little nostalgic feeling. So I was very pleasantly surprised. I mean, I'd heard it was good, but I think I enjoyed it more than I thought that I would. So that's all she wrote.